You love me, you know it.
I do love you. Because I have to. The Bible says that.
You don't have a
That's the only
choice, though.
reason. And I'm okay with it.
Whatever. The Bible said you gotta love your enemies, so.
Well, one way or the other.
Right? You know, I was actually speaking with someone earlier today, and he was struggling with some folks who have just treated him just so poorly, and part of me really wanted to be like, "But do you love them?" But I found that it can really be an obnoxious thing to ask. But at the same time, I do feel like it can be such a helpful reminder when we're going through things. Do we really love our enemies? But at the same time, again, if you say, do you love them? Right. When if I were to say, my neighbors, great example, the biblical example. King Ahab, right? Naboth, Ahab and Naboth. We really made those long A's a big thing in our Bible reading, but Ahab, Naboth. Well, Naboth had this vineyard. Ahab said, I really want this vineyard. And Naboth said, where's she at, babe? Is she resting?
She said she's coming.
Oh, okay, right on. Thank you for helping. Cindy already took the kids downstairs, so you're good to go.
Oh.
Did you forget your water bottle? Yeah. Susan drank some from it. No, I'm just teasing. She didn't. I got her good. Oh, I had a girl. So, as you know, the story, Naboth said, no, this is the inheritance of my father. And Ahab went home. One translation, I forgot which one. I think it's the NIV. No, it couldn't have said this. It said something to the degree of pouting. Like he went home and pouted. Right. And the KJV, or which was I was reading? It was CS. I don't remember. They're all so helpful when you compare. But turned his face away. He laid down on his bed and just right. And you think, how juvenile? And you say, whatever. No. We humans, we do that all the time. We're just not bold enough to do it on the outside. So Jezebel literally says, aren't you the king of Israel? Well, way to go, Jezebel.
That's why she's named Jezebel.
She's like, go and do this. So she made this plot that Ahab had, and they sent these letters to the elders of the village. And if you don't remember the story, it's totally cool. If you do, it's totally cool. But sent these letters to the elders of the village and said, hey guys, throw a feast for Naboth. Now, Naboth just got done telling the king no. So he probably knows, like, oh, they're throwing a feast for me. I'm going to die, right? I'm just saying. So then they're sitting there.
Might as well have seconds.
Right.
More dessert.
You usually pass on dessert, Naboth. Bring it on.
Anyway.
No, but.
Da-da-da-da-da.
So, I'm sorry. So the plan was, Jezebel's plan was to get two wicked men, to sit across from the table. Naboth was at the head of the table, so they probably sat pretty close to him on each side, and bring an evil report and say, Naboth, curse God and the king. I'm sure they meant the false god. But either way, these false witnesses did the job right, depending on how you define right, I should say, as ordered.
Well,
Lawfully.
Lawfully, lawlessly. And Naboth was taken out back and stoned. Without any fair hearing, without any like, hey, we've heard these two guys. Let's hear your side of the story, Naboth. Nobody did. It was just a bloodthirsty crowd. Almost like a cult-like dedication to that false god.
Huh.
To the extent where all you had to do would say, he blasphemed the name of Dagon or Marduk or whatever god they were worshiping. Certainly not Marduk, but whatever god they were worshiping. And that's all it took to trigger a whole crowd to not even giving Naboth the opportunity to say his piece. And Naboth is supposed to love the people that are throwing large stones at him.
And the Father forgive them for their know.
Exactly right. And he's supposed to pray for this equipped king Ahab and his devilish wife Jezebel. He's supposed to pray for them and then intercede for them because they're wicked. They're never going to have the ear of God until they repent, unless they repent. So as followers of the way, we're supposed to intercede for people that lie about us, slander us, and love them. And I was just thinking about that just now. Didn't mean to go into all that, but it just got me thinking, because we were joking around about, oh, I love you because I have to. But I mean, like, in reality, I don't know.
You have to.
But like, I think I can't be told to love someone. You say that's not right. No. If somebody has to say apologize and mean it, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to really mean it.
Kids, you know.
But if I can access the heart of Jesus and operate from his mindset and know how much I've been forgiven of, I might be able to apologize and seek forgiveness and forgive, but I can't if I'm being compelled to do it. So that's why I really think that Jesus and followers of him, teachers, are really the only ones who can say, hey, love one another. In other words, if the elder John was like me, I wouldn't listen to him when he says, love one another. For everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God, because I don't do as good of a job as I should. I think I do a good job, but that's probably a good indicator that I don't do as good of a job as I think I do. But I can listen to Jesus say that because he did it well. I can listen to John say that because he did it well. I can listen to Paul say that because he did it well. I like reading Paul's letters because he's so human and he's so accessible, and you can almost hear him getting ticked off as he's writing some of these letters. You know what I mean? You can just feel that. And then you read about how in Acts when he stood up for himself and he's like, no. You're not going to long distance release me from jail. We're going to do this the right way. You know what I mean? You can almost feel that in Paul. And I feel like, especially as austere and the Jew among Jew that he was, he probably had every rhyme, reason, right, and therefore, and know-how to just, I don't know what a nice way to say it is, just tear into him. You know what I mean? But he chose, I can see the restraint of Paul. Yeah, I don't know. It's an inspiration to me. I was just thinking about loving your enemies.
You see that when him and Barnabas, about John Mark, his humanity.
Mm-hmm. Peter, when Peter was like, oh, hey, the Jews are here. I'm just going to take my tray with his chocolate milk, and go to the other lunch table with the cool kids. Remember, Peter?
Mhm.
And then Paul was like, not cool, man.
I never sat with the cool kids.
I most definitely never sat with the cool kids. That wasn't a moral choice. It's because I wasn't cool.
I didn't weren't getting ready to throw something.
All right.
Exactly.
So Proverbs 10.
Mhm.
A little different than Proverbs 1 through 9. A lot different than the narratives that we have been doing on Wednesday nights. I'm so sorry, Susan. I didn't mean to leave you out. Should be a front and back and front.
Back.
Okay.
Nothing on it.
I meant there's. Anyway, all right. The Three Stooges, they didn't care. They were like, we're gonna go for the lowest lowbrow humor. My friend Matt called it so lowbrow it's unibrow. All right. So
Okay.
the Proverbs of Solomon. So this is different. It's not prose. It's not structured out. It would be. I think it wouldn't be the most prudent thing to say. Okay, how many are there? Let's divide this into this. Let's say if you're gonna read, just read. 5 or 6 of these sets of twos. There's a few of them that aren't sets of two. So just make that count as a stanza, I guess. I'm just trying to give a little structure so we know kind of what we're doing when we read. So we'll just read a few, maybe half a page worth, right? All right. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame.
Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. The wise in heart who will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. He that walketh uprightly walketh surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known. He that winketh with his eye causeth sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall.
The mouth of the righteous man is the well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, the destruction of the poor is their poverty.
The labor of the righteous tendeth to life. The fruit of the wicked is sin. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is like is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom.
The blessing of the Lord it maketh rich, he addeth no sorrow with it. It is a sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom. The fear of the wicked it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. As a whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so was the sluggard to them that send him. Fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened.
The hope of the righteous shall be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked shall perish. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness.
Any of those stand out to anyone here? Or you might say, I've thought about this proverb my whole life, or I didn't like this proverb because it hit me right between the eyes, or, you know, this proverb has helped me, or in this way it's changed my life. Or maybe it's something you just saw for the first time now, and you say, I want to talk about that, maybe figure that out, or if you have questions. Just curious to see if you have any thoughts.
Proverbs 10 seems to be focused on slothfulness
Interesting. Yeah.
as a theme.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly touches on that topic more than any other single topic, doesn't it? It's kind of like a thread that's woven through it.
Right.
And it's almost like the sloth usually isn't only a sloth. Right, we talk about the 7 deadly sins in Catholic and Orthodox tradition. Usually it's not just one of those things that's found in people that struggle with them. In other words, if somebody's a sloth, that's usually a visible character flaw that goes with some others. By this, I mean, if you are a slothful person, you're probably not working to get money. So in many cases, especially in this culture, what would you do? You would steal, you would rob, you would lie and cheat, false balances. Does that make sense? So the sloth is a sloth, but people, especially in this culture, but in our culture too, I have an example. These are usually attributes that are connected with other common attributes. I say a single word, and I think we can probably connect the dots and intersect that circle with our circle. The word is politician. There it is.
Mhm.
When I think of the word politician, it's not fair to the good ones. But in many, I mean, you go to, if I were to go back and live in Utica, I could say cop, and you might say, well, that means something completely different to me. I understand that, and it's not fair to the good ones, but there's a lot of abuse and mistreatment. You know what I mean? That happens because of that too, right? So I think a politician, and I think, what do I think when I think politician? I tend to think of someone who is power hungry, and this is just my connotation. You might have a completely different opinion. In which case, I would argue that you know better politicians than I do. I think in general, the ones that are in the headlines, anyways, are usually corrupt with power. They take bribes, money, sexually corrupt. That's almost always the underlying thread. You know, my song and dance on that. I think that underlies just about everything. Liars, cheaters. I was just informed of a movie called 2000 Mules, I think it is, in which I don't dabble in politics. I don't. I'm just going to throw it out there. They have video footage of people who are muling in votes by the thousands and thousands, up to hundreds of thousands, and they actually released it in this video. And apparently, and you say, well, those Democrats. Let's not just blame one party. I think that people are people no matter what side of the aisle they're on, though I think there probably is a correlation with. Oh, I think that's a great example. Democrat. Thanks to a Democrat, abortion was not codified today.
Yes.
Senator Joe Manchin. He voted against it. Otherwise, it would have been 50-50, and we all know that Kamala Harris would have quickly done that, which would have raised very interesting questions. What if they had not leaked the decision? They would not have acted on that. And so in court, that would have actually been inadmissible evidence, and then a decision based on inadmissible evidence would not have gone to. But then again, we're not really worried about doing the right thing in America. So if I say Democrat, if I'm not thinking of Senator Manchin right now, who's like, right now he's up here in my mind, you know, I actually think he's like a sleeper cell. I think the Republicans are like, we got to keep voting this guy in because he's one of us. I don't know. It's a thought. I would do that.
In some ways, but no.
No, you're right, Kim. That, yeah, he's no saint. But like we say, Democrat. But then on the other side, they would say Republican. What do you think of when you think Republican? It's not just about one attribute. So when I say politician, most of us don't think, oh, someone who interprets the Constitution, passes law. We think of many attributes that go with that. So when we read, a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother, you got to understand that these words, a foolish son, wicked, slack hand, sleeping in harvest, the mouth of the wicked, these aren't just meant to be singular attributes to put a bullseye on one particular trait that we don't like, if that's, you know, if I could put it that way. It's meant to describe a person who has this trait and who often shares these traits with others. So is it about a sloth? Absolutely. And about a lot of those traits that usually come attached to being a sloth. I wonder if there's something there, and I won't go on and on because I know you probably have thought of things by now, but I wonder if there is something to be said about a correlation and a causation from slothfulness. It could be quite a catalyst into a life that kind of one domino knocks over the other. In other words, the guy who never thought he'd be a thief or a murderer It could have all started with just slothfulness. You know what I mean? Kim.
Well, there's a lot of cases that you see where if the person, usually the accused,
Mm-hmm.
would have put as much energy into the right side
Mm,
as he has into doing wrong.
yes.
You know, not earning his own keep.
Yep.
But
Yep.
sometimes they go to great lengths
Yes.
to do what they want to do.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. I think of like the brain power behind George Clooney's Ocean's 11.
Yeah, yeah.
And they do this, all right, at this point, and this point, and this point, and this point. And you're like, you got to spend 168 hours building the model for one room in this casino. Huh. You know what I mean? Like, you could have gotten a job at McDonald's. I don't know. I suppose there's not quite as much of a payoff as robbing the casino, but, you know.
Then it says here, the treasures of wickedness profit nothing.
Yeah. You know, I
So
wondered
even if you
about
get
that
it,
one.
even if you get it, it's not the profit you're looking for.
I looked over this chapter today, and I did look up some. I wanted to learn more, but I didn't focus on that verse enough. But it says, treasures of wickedness profit nothing. And usually I can get an understanding of what that means by looking at the contrast.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. Oh, what is that? Are you talking about saying naughty words? No. But that which is good to the use of edifying. He's talking about words that tear people down instead of speaking life or speaking destruction. You know what I mean? So that's how I can understand. But the contrast doesn't really help me as much here as I'd like. Maybe it helps you and you can teach me. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death.
Hmm.
So, I mean, death is opposite of life. And so treasures of wickedness profit nothing. They don't give life. They give death. But righteousness delivers from death. So I wonder what treasures of wickedness is. I imagine if we looked it up in the Hebrew, treasures would mean treasures and wickedness would mean wickedness.
Which
So
ones?
should be the third contrast, so I'm guessing verse 4. Oh, verse 2, sorry. Yeah, treasure. I wonder, yeah, moral wrongness, wickedness. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing. So righteousness delivers from death. Oh, time out. This is exactly what biblical authors wanted us to do when we read the Bible, by the way. To sit and wonder, what does this mean? That's what it's about. And then I'll read it again in 10 years and say, of course, this makes perfect sense. But I don't get to do that today. You know, I don't know. Any other thoughts? Oh, but I don't want to take away from what Ralph was saying. We were talking about ill-gained fortune and treasures of wickedness. If that doesn't fit the bill, I don't know what does. You know,
But the whole lifestyle is going to end, as you compare the two, is going to end
Yeah.
with that death.
Yeah.
Where the righteous living is going to end with the life, which means you're going to have all the profit in the world here, but when you come to the end,
Yep, that's right.
it has no profit to it.
I think that's a huge point. That's it, right? You know,
I was-
treasures of wickedness
I was
profit nothing.
thinking back to an example
Yeah.
many years ago. I can't remember who it was now, but this is one of the wealthiest publishers in the world. Quote, fell off his yacht. And it's very, very often configured that one of his relatives wanted, gave him a
Sure.
little help getting on. Almost the same hour he disappeared. One of the elderly ladies at the nursing home passed away. And there he's got family that wants him dead because they want his money and could have cared less about him. And there in the nursing home, the first thing when I walked through the door was everybody said, can we have a service? We want to remember how nice she was.
Mm-hmm.
She was remembered for her life, for
That's
her
right.
well-being. So
Yeah.
she was not going to, the resident of the nursing home was not going to be any means rich,
Yep,
but she was going to be remembered by everybody there for her righteous life.
that's right.
And him, with all of his profit, all they're worried about is how fast can we divide it and make some more.
You know, that reminds me of a current event I just read about today. A young
Tell us
man.
about it.
Thank you so much. A young man was just arrested for something that happened back in 2016. He was on a raft for like 9 days, floating. What happened? My mom was there and she went to go get the supplies, and when I turned around, she was gone. Turns out that years prior, his grandfather had a ton of money, and now he's suspected in killing his grandfather in order to get that money passed down to his mother. so that he could do step 2, kill his mother, to get that money passed down to him. And he was just arrested for killing his mother back in 2016. And now they're looking at this and they're saying, it was a little fishy when his grandfather died.
Raft fishy.
You were in rare form this evening, sorry. Well, he just doesn't have Micah here. We have to give
Been
him
a long week.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But it was a little. I'm trying to think of something that has to do with the raft, but I can't top that.
Inflated?
It didn't quite float. Inflated. Well done. But the story just didn't hold water.
Mhm.
That was good. I'm proud of that one. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
But you see the point, right? Is
Needs good paddling.
wow. Or or we could no,
Shoulder
okay.
around again.
But
How deep does the story
here it
go?
says I can't seem to tread water with it, Kev. We're trying to all right.
You're just going down.
All right.
Down and-
Moving on. Pro
Moving
life
back to
preserver.
wickedness and righteousness.
I know, right? So the ill-gained fortune, right? Treasures of wickedness. This guy apparently murdered his mom and may very well have murdered his grandfather to get money. But to what end? Now he's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. If he's convicted of killing this person, then obviously I feel as someone who values life, that the only just punishment is to terminate this life who's taken a life. You may find that inconsistent. Trust me, sometimes I do too, but the only way to truly value life in a society is to enact a real just punishment for when it's taken. Lifey.
After that, it says, Lord won't suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. So treasures of wickedness profit nothing, because the Lord's going to cast them away anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the righteous are delivered from death because the Lord's going to provide for them.
Yeah. And that's a weighty proverb too, because it invokes the name of Yahweh. He doesn't just say rich people, or excuse me, good people don't famish. Like David said, I've been young and I'm old. I've never seen the righteous forsaken or receive begging bread. Great verse. But this verse in particular invokes Yahweh's name, saying Yahweh won't allow righteous people to famish. That's such a bold claim.
Well, what does famish involve?
Right, exactly right. Because people could look at Corrie ten Boom and say famishing Holocaust survivors, or not survivors, Holocaust
In the
victims,
camp, yeah.
right? And say famishing. So what does it mean to famish? So we do have to remember two things. One, this is the proverb. Two, we need to define our terms. What is famishing? I think we're speaking in broad terms here when the author of this proverb, this set of proverbs, is saying cheaters never prosper. Nice guys may finish last, but at least they finish. I think on a broad, I have to think that on a broad level, that is what this proverb is really speaking about, is what you have collected in life. If you've collected it, I'm guessing that this guy's read the Old Testament a few times, the Torah, their scriptures, and he's read about Eli's sons. He's also read about Aaron's sons. You know what I mean? Nadab and Abihu, strange fire. Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's son.
Would that be Na'abab?
Nadab and Abihu.
Na'adab.
I don't think it's got that many syllables.
Na'adab.
Oh man. But Nadab and Abihu, strange fire before God. Hophni and Phinehas, robbing people. You say, well, Hophni and Phinehas, they were made fat. Yeah, but
So is Eli.
yeah, that's true. And what was Eli's end as well? You know what I mean? He fell off. I'm just,
He was so fat.
they prospered for a while. I think the biblical vision is not to focus on the exceptions, but to focus on the general rule. And that's what Proverbs are all about. It's saying cheaters never prosper.
Well, look what we have laid up for us anyway.
That's right.
Ultimately.
That's
so.
right. Pearl? I thought you had your hand up. Did you really not?
I
Go
did.
ahead and say something.
I could have sworn you did.
Something.
Huh.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
I
I
have
could have
something.
sworn you did. Yes.
What I found at least in this one, is it's a prophet punishment.
Yeah.
What path you choose would be profit or punishment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
So like ill gain profit. No, godly profit
or punishment.
or punishment. Yeah.
Reaping and sowing.
Yeah.
Right.
Sowing and reaping.
Right.
Like the example you were saying about the guy that was just arrested for something he did in 2016.
Right.
Well, you know, he was profiting for a minute,
Yeah.
but now,
He's going down with the ship.
and now his, his freedom is dead.
Be assured your sins.
That's right. That's right.
Even if he'd never gotten caught,
Right.
you start killing people. And I'm not speaking like I'm not a movie star criminal guy who's killed people, but you commit any sin and you find out how easy it is to commit that sin.
Yeah.
Now you're wondering, are other people going to do it to me?
Yeah.
I got all this money now. Now you got to watch everybody.
Mm.
Guy never knows why anybody who likes him,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So
That's a huge point.
there's some real wealth that has nothing to do with our material position in life.
Julius Caesar's friends.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Right, right, we're all here, they're all here for the party until it's.
Yeah.
Until it's time.
Yeah.
And then you've got the idea that, Poe captured it well, the telltale heart. Now you've got
Kung Fu Panda.
now you've got a blight on your conscience that beats in the night, like Poe's telltale heart.
Yeah.
And
It's a creepy poem.
it is. And he killed this guy for the most illegitimate of reasons. Anybody remember why he killed him? He didn't like his eye. His eye was creepy and scary. And he said it was like a vulture's eye. And it would always watch, And he said he just couldn't take the eye. And of course, this is obviously an insane person, to begin with, right? And he just murders him. And then he buries the body under the floorboards. And the police come to investigate. And he hears the heart beating. Of course, it's just his conscience. But the beating keeps getting louder and louder and louder while the police are just having a good old time, chatting, hanging out. And then he finally throws himself on the ground, rips the floorboards up and see, don't you hear it? The beating of the telltale heart? Here it is. I confess, I've done it. And the cops are probably like,
Good team.
all right, if you'll just come with us. They didn't know, but the turmoil that was going on inside of this guy's heart. I wish I could say that everybody who's committed an atrocity like that felt that kind of. I think we live in such a culture that this kind of murder is really glorified and justified. So that a lot of these proverbs we would look and say, I'm sorry, Solomon, that might have made sense back then, but it doesn't now. But let's not make the mistake of chronological snobbery and think that we're so much worse now than they were then. They did some pretty rough stuff back then too, if you recall.
Yeah.
I never thought I would ever see on like social media, which is just an unmasking of the conscience and heart, by the way, and see on social media people bragging about stealing from Walmart in the self-checkout. They'll say, oh man, I scanned 2 things and I walk out with 3 bags. They never check my receipt. And then what's possibly worse is the people who work for Walmart say, oh yeah, man, these guys don't pay me enough to care about that. You go right on through. And they start a system of theft where it's literally systemic theft, corrupting the very roots of a local Walmart. And you say, it's a big corporation, they can afford it. Well, number 1, you're wrong. Number 2, you're wrong. And number 3, you're harming, you're also wrong. I'm not going to stay with wrong because I could explain why all 3 times. But you understand you're actually making the problem worse. You're driving prices even higher. And you're sinning. But we found a way to kind of justify it and say, oh, they won't miss it. It doesn't matter if they'll miss it. It's wrong. And so a lot of these proverbs, and like we've talked about, you can't justify these sins. And yet we do. And I know I'm kind of going a little off the rails, but Pearl, I know you had your hand up that time.
I was stretching. Sorry.
Don't do that to me.
I was stretching.
Yeah.
No, but it's because these people, right? I like to do that too. It's because they don't read the Bible.
Sure.
They're thinking, oh, I got away with, and then to brag about it.
Right.
That's so American. I'm just gonna say it.
It is, yeah.
Another fun viewpoint is in their profit and loss, they realize by having a self-checkout and not employing all these people
Mhm.
that they realize people
Yes.
are going to be stealing. It's still cheaper
Yes.
than having 17 overpaid employees at minimum wage
Right.
checking out people at 1 item per minute.
Yeah.
When
But see, my experience is I love the self-checkout. Because I'm
Sure.
not gonna wait 50 hours just for 2
Yeah.
hours. But, so I was in the self-checkout, and the lady that was taking care of the thing, she was looking down and looking down and looking down. And so I'm like, wow, she's really into her phone. No, she wasn't. She was checking to make sure that I was scanning everything. Because what I did was I finished, I looked back, and then she was looking around, talking to everybody. And then I walked over here and I stood there and I watched to see if she would even look down once. And she didn't. And so I was like, thank you, Lord, for showing me that. But I always, when I finish that self-checkout,
Yeah.
I wave to the camera,
Yeah.
and then I make sure I have my receipt with me. As soon as I walk around, here's my receipt. You're gonna see everything that I paid for, because there is nothing on this earth, in that store, any store,
That's right.
that's worth my freedom.
That's right. That's right. And
Or my reputation.
or your reputation, your integrity, right?
Or, right.
Yeah.
No,
Well, it's like Joseph. I don't even think he was factoring in whether or not Potiphar's wife was going to lie about him.
no,
But he just said, I'm not going to sin against God. I'm not going to sin against your husband. It's not going to happen. It's not worth it. I think, like you said, Pearl, it applies to so much of Proverbs 10. This is all about what you value most, what you want now versus what you actually want. I was just actually talking to somebody on the phone just a little bit ago, less than an hour ago. And we were talking about the things that people do in this world, sexual immorality. It's not what we really want. It's really not what we really want. Especially as believers, I certainly hope not. But even people, I think at some level, and I'm not trying to get too psychological here, but I think we're trying to like fill a void.
yes,
And people say, well, it's a God-shaped hole in the heart. It could very well be, but I think we're trying to fill a void. And even if we know that the pleasure is fleeting and transient, we still go for it. We still, like the Bible says, dealing with the slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. Sleeping in harvest. What does that lead to? Well, look at what the very next verse says. Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The name of the wicked. I think these ideas are connected in that it's a slothful person. He's not just lazy. We all know lazy people, but what does laziness lead to? It almost certainly leads to like dishonesty, theft. A great example, we just talked about self-checkouts at Walmart. Why is that person stealing? Oh, to stick it to the man. Nah, no way. You're stealing because you are trying to get something for nothing, because you have rationalized why you shouldn't have to pay for it. You don't want to pay for it, and you can get away with it, and you know it, and it doesn't bother you to steal it. And that's why these Proverbs are written to say, and Proverbs 1-9 is saying, listen to me. Wisdom says, listen to me. And this is the very first thing you read after that huge preface. Listen to me. Don't be lazy. Don't sleep in harvest. Don't turn on your hinges like a door. Work. And then it goes on to talk about, I think, some of the effects of that. Brother Al?
I think that explains a lifestyle that develops for people that go on welfare and could be working and don't.
That's
First,
a very good
it's
point.
they don't go to work, and then they get into habits because they're home.
Wow.
And then they think, well, the system
Huge.
owes me something, and then they get more and more willing to do anything
Huge.
to keep it going. And that is a progression down the list. I'm just saying, I'm not going to work. Don't tell me I have to.
And I'm going to state a general axiom here. Can't be proven, can't be disproven. And I say general because there are exceptions. But I think exactly what you said, I think it is so spot on. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. You're not busy working, you're busy doing something. And usually that something isn't, I don't, man, it's tough, right? I'm speaking in axioms here. I'm not saying there's no exception. But I've yet to see a lot of like productivity and fruit and contribution and, I want you to show me the family that is united and healthy and strong when you have an attitude of slothfulness, dependence, handouts, not contributing, always taking. I will just say those children will have a real challenge adjusting to society.
As we've discussed a few times, they'll start to believe they deserve it, so
Sure.
they'll make the phone call every time instead of bothering and try to do something. We've been
Right.
dealing with some.
And there's right, exactly right, Ralph. We've talked about that at length with some other, yes, and that intersects with your circles a lot, you know, and of course mine as well, and many of yours, and those who work in the social fields, right? You know, you see this a lot. And I remember you were telling me a story about somebody who was just basically thought they were your boss, you know, and just ordering you around years ago, and it still bothers me, and it didn't even happen to me, but because I love you guys, it just kills me, and it just, I think that mentality of, you know how humans we were designed to conquer and subjugate, but when you don't work, that doesn't get to happen, and I still think that desire doesn't go away. I don't know. I'm prating,
I have
which
a
is what the next
weird
verse talks about.
example.
Please.
There's a TV show that my wife loves to watch, and a certain individual was really, really excited when they hit, I think it was 700 pounds or 500 pounds, because then they could go on the state being disabled.
Oh, when they reached up.
Yeah, they were
Oh,
going
no.
down. They were going
Oh.
up. They were climbing high.
Oh,
And so that was one of their motivations for killing themselves with their spoon, was that when they got to a certain level of complete incapacity,
Mhm.
well, it's okay because now the state's going to support me.
thought experiment. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Angel's advocate. No, it's devil's advocate.
Devil.
Why is that wrong? Why would I be disgusted by that? Why is it wrong? And again, I'm not saying it's not. Heaven forbid. I'm just asking so that we can unpack it a little bit. Maybe put some flesh on the bones. Why is it wrong? Yeah, it was funny. Yeah,
It's a heavy statement.
yeah. I'm not even going to get into that. There's a lot there, but let's just round it out. No, I'm done. I'm not doing it. All right.
So
The gravity. I'm stopping. I can't help myself. I need to stop. All right. So, but seriously, let's
Chewing the
unpack
fat.
this. Let's unpack this. Why is it wrong? Why do we not like the idea that somebody is just sitting around taking? Is it because of our taxpayer dollars? Is that why you're so upset? Because we don't want to give that 0.002 cents every paycheck to that person? Because that's about what you pay goes to that one person. You know what I mean? Why does it bother us? Why do we see it as immoral?
It's such a waste of that person's.
The
Mhm.
body is the temple.
Yeah. Okay. I like this. So on two sides of the same coin, I think.
Suicide.
Yeah. There is a really, I like that, Eric, so much, because you're looking at somebody and you're saying, I see the potential in you to do so much more. And then Kim said, your body is a temple. And if we treat it right, we're able to do so much more with it.
it goes back to your example of Hophni, Phineas, and Eli, because they were allowed to take that fork and go in there and get whatever flesh they could get while it was being barbecued. And they wanted the whole thing. They wanted the fat. They wanted the skin. It was just this ravenous, I want it my way.
Yeah.
Which is probably, and not to be rude, but Eli was probably, he partook of it because look at how he died. He was so heavy that when he fell back in the chair, he broke his neck.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and they abused women too.
Yes, that's right.
There was.
It was the same mindset.
Yep.
I'm going to take it.
So there's a
Earning it.
so this is really cool. This is cool. This is neat. I like this. You know how we're talking about the slothful guy, right? That mindset, I'm going to just take it.
Yeah.
I'm going to just take it. If it's available and I can take it, I'm going to take it. What does that remind you of? Number one, it reminds me of an infant. Have you ever tried? The strongest grip in the world is not like Gorilla Glue. It's an infant's hand on something when they have it and they don't want to give it up, right? The will of an infant.
Right.
And it reminds me of Psalm 2. Because in my mind, I think of like this big, brawny, bearded guy who looks like an old Mesopotamian statue, but living, reaching and grabbing the chains and the bonds of his restriction. Psalm 2, It's all about ripping us out. We won't be ruled by anybody. We're independent.
Right.
Reminds me of a quote I read from Glennon Doyle, a woman who married the women's team soccer star, and it's some sort of affiliation with some church or whatnot. Just a real hot mess. And she said, maybe Eve was not a warning. Maybe Eve was a symbol of what we should do. Eat the fruit and let it burn in you with desire and go for it. Just the
That worked out really well
it's
for us.
literally like looking at a stop sign and saying, what if this is really meant to say go? I mean, you have to read the back. It's just insane. It's true insanity. But that's what it is, right? Eve saw the fruit and just, right?
Utter
And-
disregard for the fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing what it would do. And you're saying, I want it. Deceived, perhaps, yes.
Her a little, him not at all.
Yeah, right. And I can't help but wonder how there's levels of deception, right? There's gotta be. There's the deception of, well, it won't hurt. That's the deception that I do when I get home from karate. I know I'm at about 2,000 calories, and yet I'm like, oh man, I really want a snack.
You deserve it.
I deserve it. I just worked out. But what I don't tell myself is that I just worked out to burn off what I'd already eaten. And if I eat more, but I don't think that deep. I just convince myself real quick. And in the heat of the moment, all it takes is a little bit of deception. And that's all it takes. But you mentioned this idea, right? It's there. I'm going to take it. The infantile monkey. The monkey. You say, I don't believe in evolution. I'm not calling on you to believe that our cousin is a monkey. I'm calling on you to believe that we have such primal base instincts that are no different from a monkey. And that's one of the really interesting things, that without the law of Jesus Christ, there's absolutely zero reason not to live like a monkey. Not at all.
Almost like the monkey trap where you put the
That's
nut
what I
inside
was
the little
thinking.
hole.
Yeah.
Reach in. It's because I'm gonna take that and doesn't realize, holy
Yep.
cow.
Yep.
To the point where, well, I guess the only way to do this is to chew my own hand off,
Mm-hmm.
or can't.
Or the hunter's waiting there.
That's right.
Couldn't just
That's
let
right.
go of the nut and run away like a crazy person.
And you mentioned Brutus and Caesar. Monkeys. Base primal instincts of the alpha, killing the alpha to be the new alpha, right? That's what it is. We mentioned the simple man led astray by the woman of Proverbs 7, right? Monkey see, monkey do. Very basic, primal, infantile. And the whole calling of Scripture is that we're to be a new creation. We're to be different than monkeys. We're to be different.
Because the monkey doesn't have the values. It's not a value system. I'm
Agreed.
hungry, I eat.
That's
I
right.
want, I take.
That's
Where
right.
we know there's more values to it than that. It's more than just a simple decision that I'm going to cheat you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's that I hate you enough. I'm going to cheat you, or
Yeah.
I don't care whether I cheat you or not, just so that I get ahead.
That isn't that it? It's an indifference almost.
Yeah.
It's an indifference. That's the sloth. That's the violence. That's the multitude of words. That's the everything we've read.
It's all about me.
It's all about me. It's basically this alpha mentality. I'm going to take it, and it's not born necessarily out of hatred. I don't think people who have abortions hate the baby that's in them. I just think it gets in their way.
They deny the very existence of the baby.
What's that?
They deny the
They deny-
existence
that's right,
of the
that's
baby.
right.
That's how they get around it.
Denying the
It ain't
existence of the baby has become a necessary placation, right, of the conscience in order to say, now I can get it out of my way. Just like when you want to steal from Walmart because it's there, I will take it. And like a monkey, you're indifferent. Why? Because you have rationalized why Walmart really deserves to have you steal from them.
Inflation is really bad right now.
Yes. And I just need, you see what I'm saying? And what makes it worse is that a lot of like gas companies right now, they're posting record profits.
Imagine that.
Record profits. So no, they're not looking out for you. So you got corruption up here, corruption down here, and you say, are you trying to say that the world is thoroughly corrupt? Not thoroughly. We're supposed to be the ones who aren't.
That's the difference between the righteous man and the foolish man is we understand and accept the consequence of wrongdoing or the blessing and benefit of right doing, whereas the fool completely disregards it.
Yeah.
Completely, whether it be the simple man because he didn't know, or the fool because he knew and didn't care.
Yeah.
Either way, it's disregarding the ramifications of his action.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, right? You got like the Proverbs divide people, simple, scorner, scoffer, fool, different category. I used to be like, it's a progression. I don't know that it's a progression. I think people in different stages, right? Could be some progression, but
Different category of dumb.
right. And people who different levels of rejection.
Right.
Slothfulness says, I'm not going to learn that. It takes way too much work, which really stinks in Christianity, by the way. Because when Christians try to engage people on social media, and everything from simple little errors like spelling errors, because I don't need no good English. I can just convey what. Well, okay, congratulations. You're now portraying yourself as much more ignorant than you actually are, or just as ignorant as you actually are. Little tiny errors like that, all the way up to really bad arguments for Christianity. And you've made everything look, because you are unwilling to learn because it would take too much work. Ooh, I just read a quote and I screenshotted it because it made me just so
happy.
It said, oh, I want to show you, but it said something like, intellectual preaching serves only to tickle the ears of, the congregation with. And I commented, I said, brother, I don't understand this one. Well, what I mean is, you have all of these people. It doesn't matter what you meant, because you tried to do a witty little aphorism that people are going to read and misunderstand, right? And they're going to think that you just said that intellect is the enemy of faith. Thanks, man. Thanks. We were watching this program, Amber and I, and there's two young ladies and they're in a movie, and one of the young ladies is dressed inappropriately. And the young lady who's dressed appropriately looks at the other young lady who's dressed inappropriately and says, every time you do that, it makes the rest of us have to work that much harder. What she meant was, I have to work that much harder to get attention because you are so easily getting attention with the way you're dressed. That's how one lady felt. I feel the same way toward people who are ignorant on purpose because they're too lazy to learn, and say, whenever you say dumb things like that, it makes the rest of us have to work that much harder to present an accurate case for Christianity. Because when people walk into a church, they're used to the same empty-minded, harmful dreck. Sorry. You told me that in karate, too.
You know what I mean? Wise men lay up knowledge.
Yeah.
But the mouth of the foolish is near destruction.
Yeah.
It's right here in the same thing we're studying.
And drags
we
down
lay
other
up knowledge, lay up wisdom.
Yep.
Those all, and as we've been talking about the opposite of slothfulness, that takes some work.
Yeah. You're right, Ralph.
Takes some realization.
That's it. It's a real tie-in, isn't it?
Yes.
Real knowledge takes work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to school for 6 years to learn what I could just learn from opening up the pages of my King James Bible. Well, okay, number one, you just discredited everybody at whatever institution. And I'm not saying I'm pro-Bible college or anti-Bible college, but the whole point is, like, even just as simple as, hey, watch this 20-minute YouTube clip. It really helped me understand this verse. I don't need that. I got the Holy Spirit. That's called a cop-out. Mm-hmm. It is.
Slothfulness.
It's slothfulness. That's what it is. It's slothfulness disguised as piety.
Yeah.
That's wrong. And we talked about somebody who's a prating fool, and I think about pulpits all across America. And I'm sure it's been my pulpit from time to time. I'm sure of it. But when you walk in, and that's why, guys, it's been years since I've been to I went to one pastor's meeting. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was not in my circle pastor's meeting. It was at a super liberal meeting when nobody wore ties and they used the ESV. I'm sorry, I bet it. But it was just so much better because it was just, they were feeding and edifying and building up, and it wasn't like empty foolishness and rhetoric and prating, bloviating.
Is it on the same wavelength of, I don't want to read this in-depth article that's 14 pages. I'll watch a 17-second TikTok video.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I won't study a idea out myself. Well, I just read the first headline on my newsfeed.
Mm-hmm.
On Fox News. You know what I mean?
And deconversions abound because of our too long didn't read culture.
Right.
Some people say, oh, I saw this meme and it just shot some sense into me and I left Christianity. Oh, what was the meme? Well, God told Abraham, well, mutilate your genitals and then kill your son in order to serve me. Okay, well, when you put it that way, it sounds pretty rough. But it's not that at all.
Right.
but you're content to stop at a meme.
Right.
I don't blame you for deconverting. So it's really not intellect that's fueling most of the deconversion from Christianity. It's a surrender to a lack of intellect. Now, some are genuinely searching and they don't find. I get that. I really do. But most of this is just this modern, they call it the new atheist movement, as opposed to like real heavyweights like David Hume. Now you've got these, Neil deGrasse Tyson guys and Bill Nye the Science Guy, these lightweight frauds, but they're doing enough to convince the young people because it doesn't take nearly as much to dissuade people now as it did before, because we don't hold it in conviction anymore because we don't know enough about it to hold it in conviction in the first
It's our
place.
natural tendency anyway.
This is exactly right, Kim. If it won't fit on a picket sign or a bumper sticker, it's not our stance.
But it appeals to the flesh.
Yeah.
All right.
No
Right.
restraints.
Well,
That's right. That's right.
It's awfully hard to chant a 100-page treatise.
Yes. Yes.
Well, a great example is, you on the same note, look at the articles and books of atheists of 20, 30 years ago compared to the ones of today. It's like that when I pictured that, sent you a picture of a deep theological book, and it was literally 17 pages.
Right.
I mean, literally, it was this thick.
Yeah.
And I turn it sideways so no one can see the guy's name.
Yep.
But it's just like, and then I have like a 19 set volume on doctrine, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I could read, the
Yes.
7 things of fundamentalism, or I could read, that would take me 3 years to get through all those volumes.
Or as the sweet little old lady who was a Sunday school superintendent for 70 years, when she retired, they gave her a big, huge commentary set when the preacher came to visit. Well, what do you think of the commentary set? She said, you'd be amazed what the Bible will teach you about them.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Fair enough. And we should hold all things underneath the authority of the Bible, to be sure. What I've learned, like I was listening to a podcast today, Mike Lycona was in it, Daryl Bach was in it, and they talked about the differences in, these are some medium weights in apologetics. And Lycona would be a heavyweight. He's he's brilliant. And they talked about some of the differences in the gospel accounts. And I learned in that podcast, something I hadn't heard before, is that about 30% of all Jewish ladies were named Mary. Would have been Miriam back then, Mary, or Salome. And so a lot of critics of the Bible, they'll say, all these Mary, there's different Marys here and Marys there. Well, 30% of all Jewish girls were named either Mary, and then 5% of that 30. So about 25% were about Mary, another 5% were Salome. So there's going to be more Marys than Salomes in the scripture. And so it's a simple little tiny factoid that I learned, but that actually will come to a bit of a defense when someone says, oh, which Mary? And that, you know what I mean? Just a little silly thing. But the more we learn about something, the more you can properly form convictions. And I'll try to stop my bloviating by saying this. I've said this for years. I won't take it back. Put it on my gravestone.
Okay.
There's 2 kinds of Christians in this world. Christians who are only Christians because they're gullible and they'll believe anything. And Christians who are Christians because they've truly studied it out and they believe what they believe because they've done the research. And the sad part is, in my humble, ignorant opinion, the majority of Christians are genuine Christians. Don't get me wrong. They have faith. Don't get me wrong. But I think it could be blown over, toppled with a feather, if come across any serious heavyweight arguments against Christianity.
Even just persecution.
Persecution. And I don't mean that condescendingly. I'm not even saying that I'm in the best category. I'm not. Please don't get me wrong. But it's a genuine concern of mine. Is this too long didn't read obsession. This obsession with simplicity, this obsession with truncation had led us to a lack of depth. And I really think that Proverbs 10 does speak to this over and over again, at least where it speaks of slothfulness. We're sleeping in the harvest, ladies and gentlemen. And then when it's time to harvest, to know our stuff, we show up empty-handed because, I was, watching The Office. Nothing wrong with watching a fun TV show. But that's not what you want to be a master of. You want to be a master of one thing. I know a lot about Star Trek. A lot.
I'm sorry.
Some of y'all, it's okay. I forgive you. I know too much about Star Trek, maybe. It's true. I like to watch behind the scenes. I like to see him put on the makeup. You should see Michael Dorn turn into Worf. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Some of y'all know all the players of the Red Sox team, just like I know the starting 5 of the 2003 Syracuse University basketball team. It's great. But if we can list that and we can't tell you certain dates, the kings of Judah and Israel, I'm challenging myself here too, because I can't rattle off the kings of Israel. Maybe if you tried me long enough, maybe the southern kingdom. Northern kingdom, not a chance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yet I can tell you the model numbers of the Starship Enterprise and where they fit in the timeline of the different movies and shows. I know, guys. And it's not because I dedicated myself to it, but because I exposed myself to it so much. You see. Why? Because Star Trek's really entertaining and it's fun, and you can do it while you're sitting down eating Pringles. I'm just saying, I'm just talking out loud here.
On that note, Jay and I were talking the other day about why the first, obviously the Pentateuch, and then once you get in the histories, how they become more and more concise. And I said, well, you realize, honey, that the Pentateuch was oral tradition for a long time.
Hundreds of years. That's right.
And so you have to realize they're not going to memorize every detail, because until they had an actual written language that could handle it.
That's really interesting.
And she's like, oh. And so then once they had the written language, and they can get their histories, and then we find the histories and the poetry and the prophecy, it became more and more detailed.
Sure.
Because language, and it just became easier to transpose. It became easier to, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's huge. On that, just for kicks, right? If you were to ask me to recall, I mentioned The Office a while ago. Say, what happened in this episode of The Office? Oh, it's great. Michael Scott burned his foot on a George Foreman grill. And then Dwight was driving him to the hospital and got a concussion. And then they had a workplace. I can tell you some of the events in that program, in that episode, right? But imagine if it was the only thing we did. No TV, no phones, everybody just worked. And we just told stories around the fire every night. And you committed those to memory. And you told them, and you heard them, and you told them, and you heard them daily. That's what the Bible said to do, by the way. Tell them to your children when you're in. You would have a pretty accurate synopsis of the events. And by the time they made it to paper, sure, they might have some lack of some details that we'd like or whatnot, but they tell the story.
Right.
Today, and this is just a little apologetics thing for kicks, today we want pinpoint accuracy in modern biography. Ancient biography. Mike Licona, the guy I mentioned a while ago, he read 81 biographies from around the time of Jesus. Plutarch wrote most of them. And he wrote these biographies, and he said they're not to the detail. That's not what ancient biography was. Ancient biography told the story, and they took literary license with certain things in order to prove a point. He says what astounds him about the Gospels is even though Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the synoptics, do take some of those literary discrepancies, and that's why they're a little different from each other to make different points. They're unified so strongly around the core story of Jesus that it stands out from other ancient biographies because they're so dedicated to getting the story exactly right, which is so impressive about the Pentateuch and the New Testament. And it's just, I love the textual history of the Bible. It's a fascinating subject. Don't go into it if you don't want to be unsettled, though.
Which is the long run that proves its accuracy.
Yeah, I'd argue that
rather than take away from it, actually proves it.
J. Warner Wallace talks about that a lot. He's a good theologian, apologetic. Anyways, I don't want to drag it out. It's already 7:08. I want to get these things done before 7:15 because I don't want to take a whole bunch of liberty just because I'm, free from karate. Any other thoughts or anything? I won't blow it. I'll zip my lip. I'll just listen.
Whatever floats your boat. We're back to that.
Are we back to that?
Somebody is.
That's a sinking ship. It's vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes.
Over here.
What's that?
Eric,
yes.
There's no shortcut to virtue.
Hmm.
And virtue is worth way more than earthly success.
I said I'd zip my lip. Kevin, talk about the thing where it says add to your faith this and this and this and this.
No.
Fine. Well, I can't. All right, I'm not going to do it. All I will say is the Bible agrees.
Please just.
Oh my goodness, thank you for asking me to elucidate on that.
Peter wrote there about add addition.
You already got it, So Peter writes in his letter, add to this, add to this. It means you can't shortcut your way to that. This is a process. Who was I talking to? I was talking to Matt today. And he said, I'm not trying to sound like a heretic. He goes, but I'm not as judgy anymore. When somebody says they're a follower of Jesus, I try to just take them at their word. Because they could be on a completely different path of growth than I am. And I was reminded of a conversation I had heard before last week on a podcast or an episode of something where it said Christianity is about growth. It's not about perfection. It's about growth. Yeah, that's huge. There is no shortcut to virtue. It takes work. Sanctification's work. If it's not work, what is it? You think it's easy for a... Come on. Anyway, sorry. Hand.
So I was talking to someone who was baptized, but she says my Catholic heritage. So she believes in purgatory, and I said, well, you know, from my experiences, I don't. She believes that you can pray for someone that's dead. So we're going back and forth, and I said, I just can't find that in the Bible.
Right.
And then I was, you know, talking to her about the rich man and Lazarus.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, Heavenly Father still hasn't given me that peace yet. Okay.
And at that point, you just got to say, okay. Susan?
Yeah, I too don't find that in the Bible, but I still pray for sometimes for people who have passed, because I don't know what their life experience was. So my prayer is because God is not time.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And you might say, I don't do that. You might. If someone says, I heard that so-and-so fell off the building, and we say, oh, Lord, please don't let him be hurt too bad.
He fell off the building.
He either is or isn't.
Yeah.
What are you asking? You know what I mean? You recognize that he's timeless, and you pray that way too. You might. God is outside of time. Kind of interesting there. I still haven't gotten this unraveled, and I'm not even going to unpack it. I'm just going to mention it. There were people who baptized others for the dead in the scripture. And the Mormons say, that's because we should. That's a regulated principle, we should. Others say, Paul was talking about weirdos, right? Doesn't mean that we should. But there was some understanding of people who had passed, and there would be baptism for those who died. I would love it if I die and I find out that.
Isn't baptism a personal?
It is. It certainly is. It's a
choice.
It's a commitment. It would be like giving citizenship to somebody posthumously. It's honorary, but it doesn't do anything for that person.
Like a 10th degree black belt.
Right. For Fred Villari. But
So that's actually what the 10th degree black belt is designed to be, is posthumous.
Oh, really? Oh.
So what is the words that you use when you say, buried in the likeness of his death, raised in the
Likeness of his resurrection, to walk in newness of life.
right? So
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, baptism,
And Raven.
right. I think it was a statement. And here's the thing, Paul didn't come right out and say, did Peter? Paul. He didn't come right out and say, those idiots, what are they? He was using that to make a broader point. Well, then what does it say of these people who baptize for the dead if there's no hope for the future? He's using that as support. He did that a lot, I think. For what it's worth, purgatory is not found in our Bibles. It is found, however, in the Catholic Bibles. The Catholic Bibles contain a section in the middle called what we call the Apocrypha, which essentially means, apocalypse means revealed. Pseudographica means like false works. The Apocrypha is pseudographica. They were actually very important literary works to the early church. What's that?
There's a lot of history in
A
them.
lot of history. But there are some weird things in there. Stuff that we would consider weird. Stuff that they necessarily don't. But even then, it doesn't teach purgatory outright. That's just one interpretation of one verse or two. But then again, guys, in First Clement, Clement was a disciple of one of the apostles. Some would say Paul. In First Clement, he talks about how in a faraway land, we know that there is such an animal as the phoenix. And when the phoenix dies, it turns to ash, and then a new phoenix rises from the ashes. And he uses that as a really cool illustration of resurrection. What he didn't know is that there is no such thing as a phoenix. He was just using his own. Right, that's true. We don't know. That's true. That is fair. But he was using his understanding of something he'd heard about in a faraway land. You see, and so there's some writings that we would look at as very weird, but thankfully, again, that core element is the same. Faith in God through Jesus is the way of eternal life. And I don't know. That's a good way to end it. I really am trying to stop talking. It's 7:14 and I got 10 seconds left, so I'm really done. I love you.